In November 2024, the world witnessed the beginning of a new chapter in U.S.-Canada relations, marked by an escalation of trade disputes that threatened economic stability and diplomatic equilibrium. But what served as the catalyst for this transnational conflict? And what consequences await both countries? On November 25, 2024, President Donald Trump announced via Truth Social the imposition of a 25% tariff on all imports from Canada and Mexico, citing the need to secure U.S. borders. Simultaneously, he announced a 10% tariff on Chinese imports, aiming to influence the production of illegal fentanyl. Canada's reaction was swift. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau condemned the move as reckless and warned of its potentially devastating consequences for both economies. Despite attempts to resolve the situation, on January 20, 2025, Trump signed a memorandum instructing his cabinet to assess the emergency situation caused by illegal migration and fentanyl flows from Canada, Mexico, and China. A memo sent to senior officials strongly recommended considering trade countermeasures and national security measures as a response to the situation, leaving little doubt about the imminent imposition of tariffs. And so, just a few days later, on February 1, 2025, Donald Trump signed an executive order imposing 25% tariffs on goods imported from Mexico and Canada, while also establishing a 10% tariff on Chinese imports. The White House administration was quick to announce that these tariffs would officially take effect on February 4. In response to such a sharp attack, Justin Trudeau, Prime Minister of Canada, announced his intention to impose equivalent tariffs on American goods, targeting $30 billion worth of Canadian imports from the U.S. Moreover, plans were announced to expand these countermeasures to a substantial $125 billion Canadian dollars within the coming weeks. However, amid growing concerns about potential economic turmoil, on February 3, Trump unexpectedly announced a one-month suspension of tariffs on Canada and Mexico, citing separate agreements reached with both countries. Under these agreements, Canada pledged to strengthen its border security and appoint a special envoy to combat fentanyl, while Mexico committed to deploy additional troops to its northern border. Despite the brief respite given to North American trade, the United States steadily moved towards imposing 10% tariffs on Chinese imports, which took place on February 4. However, as soon as the month-long postponement came to an end, tensions reached a critical point again on February 27. Donald Trump reaffirmed his intention to impose 25% tariffs against Canada and Mexico once the suspension expired on March 4, as well as an additional 10% tariff on Chinese imports. The next day, Justin Trudeau issued a statement calling the tariffs unacceptable and punitive, promising that Canada would respond with mirror measures. By March 3, the prospect of a full-scale trade war had sent markets into a frenzy. Speaking at the White House, Trump firmly stated that the tariffs would take effect precisely at midnight. Wall Street's reaction was immediate. The S&P 500 closed down 1.7%, its worst trading day since December. At 0:01 Eastern Time on March 4, the tariffs officially took effect, and the trade war ignited almost instantly. Canada and China announced retaliatory tariffs, vowing to take additional economic countermeasures. In response to the decision to impose tariffs, Prime Minister Trudeau lashed out with criticism, calling the move short-sighted and destructive. He emphasized that Canada would immediately impose retaliatory 25% tariffs on a wide range of American exports, targeting key sectors of the U.S. economy, such as agriculture, consumer goods, and manufacturing. In contrast to Canada's tough stance, Mexico adopted a more restrained position. President Claudia Sheinbaum expressed disagreement with the imposition of tariffs, but chose to postpone an immediate response in favor of direct negotiations with Donald Trump. This uncertainty further contributed to the decline of American stocks, as investors expressed concerns about prolonged economic instability. An unexpected turn occurred on March 5, when Trump announced a one-month delay in the imposition of auto tariffs. This decision followed active lobbying by major American automakers, including Ford, General Motors, and Stellantis, the parent company of Jeep and Chrysler, who warned of serious disruptions to supply chains. This postponement brought temporary relief to the markets, triggering a stock market recovery and a rise in major indices by the end of the trading day. However, on March 6, Trump took further action by signing an order suspending tariffs on goods covered by the United States-Mexico-Canada Agreement, USMCA. Despite some easing of tensions, financial markets remained volatile. The S&P 500 fell another 2%, and the Nasdaq lost 2.5%, reflecting investors' continued anxiety about unpredictable trade policies. With the situation evolving rapidly, the prospects for trade relations between the U.S. and Canada remain shrouded in uncertainty. Businesses on both sides of the border are struggling to adapt to the rapidly changing rules of the game, while political leaders carefully weigh their next steps. Whether the parties can find a long-term solution, or whether the vicious cycle of tariffs and retaliatory measures will continue, remains to be seen. Canada seems determined not to give in to pressure. In response to the Trump administration's actions, Ottawa is taking unprecedented countermeasures. Ontario Premier Doug Ford announced the introduction of a 25% levy on electricity exports to the United States, starting Monday, March 10th. This measure will affect approximately 1.5 million American households and businesses in states such as Michigan, New York, and Minnesota, which rely heavily on electricity supplies from Ontario. Ontario Premier Doug Ford has made it clear that the province is prepared to escalate measures in response to trade disputes, and has not ruled out the toughest steps. He stressed that he would not hesitate to further increase export fees, or, if necessary, completely cut off electricity supplies. Amid escalating tensions over the Trump administration's decision to impose 25% tariffs on Canadian steel exports and 10% duties on energy, the Ontario government is considering retaliatory measures that could have far-reaching consequences. These tariffs could seriously hit key sectors of the Canadian economy, including the automotive and steel industries, and lead to higher retail prices. At a press conference, Premier Ford reaffirmed his administration's readiness for decisive action, warning of the possibility of suspending electricity exports to states critically dependent on Canadian supplies, such as New York, Michigan, and Minnesota. If they try to harm Ontario, I am ready to use all available means, up to and including cutting off electricity supplies, he said, adding the statement with a slight smile. Such rhetoric demonstrates the seriousness of the provincial government's intentions to protect its economic interests in the face of an escalating trade conflict. Amid growing tensions in trade relations between Canada and the U.S., the Ontario government is demonstrating a strong determination to defend the province's economic interests. Premier Doug Ford, known for his energetic rhetoric, does not intend to stand aside as the country prepares for potential economic shocks caused by the Trump administration's trade policies. The province is considering various retaliatory options beyond the energy sector. In particular, it is proposed to introduce a fee for each megawatt of electricity exported to the United States, which will undoubtedly affect final prices for American consumers and businesses. Moreover, there are threats to cancel a multimillion-dollar contract with Elon Musk's company Starlink, as well as to completely remove American alcoholic beverages from the LCBO retail network in the event of further escalation of the tariff war. The economic consequences of such measures could be significant. Analysts predict possible job losses and rising consumer prices in Canada. Ontario, as the country's industrial center, is particularly vulnerable. In response to the looming challenges, the province's progressive conservative government has set aside significant funds, more than $40 billion, for emergency economic assistance. This package includes the creation of the Ontario Protection Fund with a capital of $5 billion, tax payment deferrals, wage subsidies, and direct financial support to municipalities. Preventive financial support measures demonstrate the seriousness of the trade conflict and its likely impact on companies and employed citizens across the province. Despite these precautions, Ford acknowledges the unpredictability of Trump's next steps, noting that no one can predict what will happen tomorrow, not even the U.S. president himself. His words reflect the general uncertainty regarding the United States trade policy under Trump. As companies on both sides of the border prepare for the official introduction of tariffs, the federal government is also promising an adequate response. Ford supports a mirror response strategy, where any trade measures from the U.S. will be offset by similar countermeasures. While Ford does not specify the tariffs that may be imposed at the provincial level, Its readiness to act decisively indicates that Ontario is prepared to escalate the conflict if necessary. Canadian Member of Parliament, Charlie Angus, has openly criticized recent U.S. trade policies and President Donald Trump's statements regarding Canada, highlighting the growing tension in relations between the two countries. In response to the Trump administration's protectionist measures, Angus has called on Canadian citizens to demonstrate economic patriotism. He has suggested boycotting American goods to support domestic producers and reduce dependence on imports from the United States. This move reflects his consistent stance in defending national economic interests amidst escalating trade tensions between the two countries. Angus has also strongly opposed President Trump's suggestions of incorporating Canada into the U.S. as the 51st state. He has rejected such ideas as infringing on the sovereignty and independence of the Canadian state. In a recent interview, he emphasized that Canada is a proud nation with a unique identity, and any proposals that question its autonomy cannot be supported. As a sign of protest against Trump's policies and rhetoric towards Canada, Angus has initiated a parliamentary petition calling on the Canadian government to ban the American president from entering Canada to attend the upcoming G7 summit in June. This action further demonstrates his disapproval of the American administration's actions. America, as one of the world's economic giants, relies heavily on imports in key sectors that define its development and sustainability. From energy resources and raw materials to food, beverages, and highly skilled labor, international trade has historically been a pillar of the American economy. However, during President Donald Trump's administration, with its America First policy, these trade ties came under significant pressure. In an effort to support domestic industry, the administration imposed tariffs and trade restrictions on both allies and competitors, including Canada, the European Union, and China. While this policy aimed to protect American manufacturing and resonated with nationalistic sentiments, it often overlooked the complex global supply chains that had been formed over decades in the era of globalization. The United States does not merely import consumer goods. It is critically dependent on foreign resources such as crude oil, rare earth minerals, electricity, and other essential materials necessary for industrial and technological progress. In today's world of global scientific advancement, international cooperation, and the exchange of expertise have become cornerstones for maintaining leadership in innovation and cutting-edge research. In response to the protectionist measures undertaken by the Trump administration, Canada is considering countermeasures that go far beyond standard trade sanctions. One of the most discussed options is imposing restrictions on the export of oil and electricity to the United States. This move could seriously disrupt established energy resource supply chains, given Canada's significant role in meeting U.S. energy needs. Such actions could have far-reaching consequences, especially for industries critically dependent on a stable electricity supply. Furthermore, Canadian authorities are exploring the possibility of imposing restrictions on the export of other key commodities, such as rare earth elements and natural gas. These materials play an indispensable role in various sectors of the economy, from the defense industry to the production of renewable energy sources. In 2024, the energy market between the United States and Canada demonstrated impressive volumes. Energy imports from the northern country reached $129.185 billion, solidifying Canada's position as a key energy supplier for the American economy. Crude oil accounts for a significant portion of this amount, 1.46 billion barrels, valued at $16.8 billion. Natural gas also plays a substantial role, 271 billion cubic feet worth $10.8 billion. Beyond hydrocarbons, the U.S. imported 37 terawatt-hours of electricity, worth $1.85 billion and 10 million pounds of uranium valued at $0.4 billion. Oil is the largest component of energy imports, underscoring the indispensability of Canadian supplies for U.S. energy stability. Recognizing its dependence on the U.S. market, Canada is actively diversifying its export destinations, aiming to strengthen its position in the Far East, including China and Japan. This strategic shift was triggered by trade disputes and the threat of U.S. tariffs. The launch of the Trans Mountain Expansion, TMX, pipeline in early 2024 marked a significant milestone in reorienting Canadian oil to Asian markets. The new pipeline, connecting Alberta to the Pacific coast, has opened new horizons for Canadian energy companies seeking to expand their presence in Asian markets. This strategically important route enables the supply of energy resources to countries such as China, Japan, and South Korea, opening new opportunities for economic growth and export diversification. As early as September 2024, refineries in Japan and South Korea, as well as a refinery in Brunei, received the first shipments of Canadian crude oil transported via the TMX pipeline. This landmark moment marked the beginning of a new era in energy cooperation between Canada and the Asia-Pacific region. Particularly impressive was the growth in energy exports from Alberta to China. In the first 11 months of 2024, shipments reached $2 billion, 5 times higher than in the same period of the previous year. Crude oil exports accounted for the lion's share of this growth, soaring from $0 to $1.8 billion. Japan has also become a key partner for Canadian energy exporters. In February 2025, Alberta's Minister of Environment and Protected Areas, Rebecca Schultz, emphasized the strategic importance of strengthening its position in the Japanese market, especially given the continued uncertainty in trade relations with the United States and the potential threat of new tariffs. This forward-looking strategy aims to secure alternative sales channels for natural gas and crude oil from Alberta, ensuring the stability and sustainability of the province's energy sector. Despite its status as an energy giant, the United States continues to rely on imports to maintain energy balance in various regions and industries. This includes crude oil, natural gas, electricity, coal, and uranium, with Canada playing an indispensable role in supplying these resources to different parts of America. In 2024, daily U.S. crude oil imports averaged 6.1 million barrels, of which more than 4 million, or 67%, came from Canada. The majority of these shipments are transported via key pipelines such as Keystone XL and Enbridge Mainline, reaching strategically important refineries in several states. Illinois, with its industrial centers in Chicago and Joliet, processes a significant portion of Canadian crude oil, converting it into fuel and other essential products. Texas, in turn, receives heavy crude oil through an extensive network of pipelines, including the Keystone Pipeline System, ensuring the operation of its refining complexes. Minnesota benefits from the Enbridge Mainline, which delivers crude oil to refineries in St. Paul, supporting economic activity in the region. The states of Michigan and Ohio also receive Canadian oil through the same network, supplying refineries in Detroit and Toledo, underscoring the importance of Canadian supplies for the energy infrastructure of the Midwest. Refineries in several states are critically dependent on Canadian crude oil supplies. Refined products, such as gasoline and diesel fuel, are then distributed throughout the Midwest and beyond, ensuring the functioning of the region's economy. Imports of natural gas from Canada play an equally important role in U.S. energy security. In 2024, imports reached 8.5 billion cubic feet per day, with 7.4 billion coming from Canadian supplies. This flow of energy supports the livelihoods of the Midwest and Northeast, ensuring uninterrupted supply for residential heating, power generation, and industrial needs. States such as New York and the New England states, Massachusetts, Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine, are particularly dependent on Canadian gas in the winter months, when heating demand peaks. Illinois and Michigan also rely on these supplies to keep homes warm and ensure industrial processes. The states of Minnesota, North Dakota, and Wisconsin use Canadian gas for electricity generation and to support industrial operations. Stable energy supplies from Canada play an indispensable role in ensuring the energy security of the United States, especially in regions with harsh climates. In addition to traditional oil and gas, importing electricity from the northern country is a vital element in maintaining U.S. energy stability. In 2024, the American economy consumed approximately 39 terawatt-hours of imported electricity, with an impressive 95% of that volume coming from Canada. This cross-border electricity trade serves as a reliable mechanism for balancing regional supply and demand, which is particularly important for states directly integrated into the Canadian power grid. In particular, New York State experiences significant benefits from importing clean hydroelectric power from Quebec, reducing its reliance on fossil fuels and decreasing its carbon footprint. Vermont and the entire New England region also rely heavily on electricity supplies from Hydro-Quebec, ensuring power grid stability and effectively supplementing local renewable energy sources. Michigan, in turn, imports electricity from Ontario to cover peak consumption loads, ensuring a reliable energy supply during periods of increased demand. Minnesota and North Dakota also actively use Canadian hydroelectric power to maintain the sustainability and efficiency of their regional energy systems, contributing to the overall strengthening of the country's energy security. Although the United States' dependence on coal imports is decreasing, Canada continues to play a role in meeting the energy needs of its southern neighbor. In 2024, total U.S. coal imports amounted to 4 million short tons, with supplies coming from Canada, Colombia, and Indonesia. Canadian coal is used in Michigan, supporting both industrial enterprises and the energy sector. Minnesota also uses a portion of Canadian imports for steel production. Small volumes of coal are also supplied to New England, but its importance in the region's energy balance is gradually decreasing, giving way to more environmentally friendly energy sources. In addition to coal, Canada supplies the United States with another strategically important resource: uranium, which is necessary for the operation of nuclear power plants. In 2024, the United States imported 50 million pounds of this radioactive metal, with Canada providing 20% of the total supply. This uranium is used to support the operation of nuclear reactors in a number of states, including Illinois, which has the largest number of nuclear power plants in the country. Thus, the energy partnership between Canada and the United States covers a wide range of resources, from traditional coal to uranium, which plays a key role in nuclear energy. The states of South and North Carolina, where nuclear energy plays an important role, largely ensure the operation of their nuclear reactors through uranium supplies from Canada. Pennsylvania, another major player in the nuclear industry, also benefits from stable Canadian supplies of this strategic raw material. Tennessee, where key uranium processing and enrichment facilities are located, vitally needs imports to maintain the continuous cycle of nuclear energy production. Amid such significant dependence of the United States on Canadian energy resources, the Trump administration took steps to impose tariffs on goods from Canada, motivated by the need to combat illegal drug trafficking and illegal immigration. However, as the facts show, only a small proportion of prohibited substances, in particular fentanyl, enters the country through the Canadian border. This dissonance between the stated goals and the real situation suggests that the administration's trade policy may have been guided by considerations other than those publicly stated. In turn, the administration consistently defended the imposed tariffs, linking them to broader efforts to curb illegal immigration and the flow of drugs, especially fentanyl, into the United States. Despite statements about combating drug trafficking, statistics indicate that only a small proportion of fentanyl entering the United States originates in Canada, about 0.2%, while the main flows come from China and Mexico. This raises legitimate questions about the real motives for imposing high tariffs on Canadian goods. It is likely that the true goal lies in the desire to establish control over Canada's rich natural resources. The country has colossal reserves of minerals, oil, and natural gas, which are of strategic importance to the American economy. In addition, Canada's geographic location opens up important advantages in the Arctic region, which is becoming an arena of geopolitical interests due to melting glaciers and the opening of new shipping routes. Another factor that cannot be ruled out is national security considerations. The annexation of Canada by the United States would eliminate the northern border, simplify defense logistics, and create a unified, more powerful position in North America. Such an approach is reflected in historical concepts emphasizing continental security and could fuel the current administration's rhetoric regarding possible annexation. Domestically, talk of annexation could serve as a mobilizing factor, uniting the electorate around nationalistic ideas. By taking an uncompromising stance on trade and border control, the administration likely seeks to strengthen its political position, shift public attention away from domestic problems, and demonstrate resolve on the international stage. It is likely that the threats of annexation are a tough negotiating tactic aimed at forcing Canada to make concessions on trade and other bilateral issues. By proposing such radical measures, the administration may be trying to create additional leverage to obtain more favorable terms from the Canadian side. Experts believe that such trade maneuvers may be part of a larger strategic game. There is a view that customs tariffs are just one element of a grand plan to encourage Canada to more closely integrate its economic and geopolitical priorities with the interests of the United States. A strong argument in favor of this hypothesis is President Trump's repeated suggestions that Canada could join the U.S. as the 51st state, linking the removal of tariffs to the implementation of such a scenario. This concludes our review. Thank you for your attention to this material. Your participation and interest in our publications are of great importance to us. If the information presented was useful or of interest to you, we would appreciate your support in the form of a like and a subscription to our channel to stay up to date with new releases. Another video from our channel that may be of interest to you is now displayed on your